Welcome back to Blue's Garden. This is my guide to the best composting recipe that I've ever found. I start with a space that's about 1 meter square, about 3 foot by 3 foot. I have some chicken wire fencing and some cardboard surrounding the outside. Ideally, you are going to layer stuff, browns, greens, and ideally 30 times by weight carbon to nitrogen. And in reality, it's about 50-50, half and half. Carbon, the nitrogen, greens, grass clippings, plants, old plants, fruit, kitchen scraps. The browns, the carbon, shredded paper, shredded cardboard, tons of dead leaves in the fall, small sticks, twigs, any bark. That's browns and greens mixed. And I like to layer it back and forth, keep it a little bit moist. Just keep going throughout the year. As my plants die, I'll just add bits more in. When I start, I like to turn things about once a week. Later, it turns into about once every 2 weeks. Ideally, you want to get it nice and hot, about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And that gets things going. Adding more coffee grounds really does help. That higher nitrogen really does boost it. Later in the fall, I will flip it about once every couple of weeks, maybe once a month. Turn it early spring. This is what you end up with. I take the front off. And by the way, that was bad. Never leave any plastic tape or anything on your cardboard. I was bad. And you can kind of clearly see the line where above is not finished, it's new, and below is finished. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take any of that unfinished stuff off, and I'm going to just put it aside. That'll go back into the compost pile for later. But I want to get to that really rich brown humus, the good soil, the good compost, all that nicely broken down stuff. And I'm going to take this and load up a wheelbarrow, and any of the unfinished stuff, you can see me sort of sorting it out, and I'll get to it a little later too. But all of it goes into a big wheelbarrow. Now, in order to use it, I actually cut it with some peat moss. Canadian peat moss is a sustainably harvested product. It's not like the UK stuff where they are just strip mining the peat. The Canadian stuff is pretty sustainable. And then the next thing you do is you're going to break up all the aggregates, and that's just a fancy word for saying clumps. I go through and I break up all of the bits, and then as I'm turning to mix the peat and the compost in, I'm actually going to pull out any of the unfinished bits I find. Like if I find some leaves or unfinished cardboard or big twigs, I'll take all that and pop it back into the compost pile. You could sift this if you wanted. I don't. I think that's a little excessive. There's nothing wrong with some unbroken down stuff, just as long as it's not overly full of it. As I sort it all out and mix it all up to get a good mix, I take any of the bits out that I don't want in, and that stuff goes into the compost pile. Or if there's a tiny bit of plastic, that gets tossed out into recycling. Now the stuff's ready for my fabric grow bags, which is how I grow everything, almost 100% fabric grow bags. What I'm going to end up doing is in my fabric grow bags, I have a mix that is 1/3 peat, 1/3 of the compost, my finished compost, and then I mix it with 1/3 of last year's soil, and then I use some specific fertilizer for the plants. And this is the stuff that I pulled off the top, now in my new compost pile. Please like, share, and subscribe. It helps me grow, and that helps you grow.